I had no prior knowledge of the Watergate break-in.
I neither took part in nor knew about any of the subsequent cover-up activities. My statement has
been challenged by only one of the 35 witnesses who appeared.
Dean was saying one thing, the White House was saying something contradictory, and Senator Ervin felt like there may never be a way that this was going to be resolved.
But there was a way to resolve it, stemming from a Nixon practice that John Dean had long suspected.
As well. The President almost from the outset began asking me a number of leading questions, which made me think that the conversation was being taped and a record was being made to protect himself.
In fact, all the President's White House meetings were automatically recorded on a secret system that Nixon had installed. One of the few people who knew of its existence was White House aide Alexander Butterfield. When it was his turn to face the committee's investigators, he was not sure he could keep the taping secret without committing perjury.
I had rehearsed this in my mind many, many times. If asked a relatively vague or indirect question, the answer to which would be about the tapes, I could easily fuzz it. I could give a vague answer in response. But if I were asked a direct question, I would give a direct answer, and the tapes would be revealed.
The Democrats' investigator had a document prepared by the President intended to disprove Dean's testimony.
A memo had come over secretly from the White House to the Republicans. It was a detailed account, line by line, quotes of what Dean had said to the President, what the President had said back.
He flipped this little paper my way and said, "Where might this paper have come from?"
And Butterfield picked up the thing and read it and said, "Oh, this is very detailed. This is very detailed." So, well, where could it come from? He said, "Well, let me think about that a minute." And he set it down.
And to my great relief, they moved on to other things.
While Scott Armstrong was asking Butterfield about other matters through the remainder of his interview, I was trying to decide how I wanted to approach this because I knew my time would come.
After 3 hours, the Republican counsel got his turn.
I asked Butterfield if there might be any validity to the suggestion made by John Dean in his testimony that there was a taping system in the White House. That
was a direct question. So I said, I remember saying, I don't know why I said this, I said, "I'm sorry you fellows asked me that question." Well, I was sorry in a way. Yes, there was. And they said, "Could you tell us about it?"
The Democrats' investigator could hardly wait to tell his boss.
And he came up, his face was drenched, his eyes were bulging, and the first words that came out of his mouth is, "The President bugged himself."
But next morning, Saturday, euphoria gave way to doubt.
It could just as likely, if there was a taping system, exonerate the President and prove that John Dean was a liar. I wanted to test Dean's credibility.
The chief counsel met his deputy, and they set off to see Dean.
Sam Dash and Jim Hamilton came out to the house. Mo and I were there, but Sam really got right down to business. And what he told me is he said that, John, there's a taping system in the White House. How do you feel about that?
And I can remember that Mo and John, I believe, was sitting on a couch, and I was standing by the fireplace. And I did that on purpose, so I could gauge John's reaction. I was watching him very intently, and Sam told him, and I never will forget it, John broke into this huge smile, this beaming smile.
I couldn't have been more elated. I said, "Sam," I said, "everything I've told you, you're now going to find a record for."
Just as a reminder that a date by itself.
On Monday morning, Butterfield was having his hair cut. Over the weekend, surprisingly, the news had not leaked, and the committee had not summoned him. He thought he'd been spared the ordeal of testifying in public after all.
And suddenly there's a phone call, so they bring the phone over to me, and I answered, "It's Jim Hamilton."
And I said to him that the committee wanted him to testify that afternoon. And he was quite upset about this.
I was profane, as a matter of fact, and I told Jim Hamilton, nothing against Jim Hamilton, but I just said, "I am not going to be there."
So I went back up to the hearing room, and I leaned over to Senator Irvin, and I said, Senator, I have located Mr. Butterfield. He is in the barbershop, but he says he's not going to come.
And I'm watching the TV. All barbershops and beauty salons had the TV on. Suddenly, I see Jim Hamilton behind the chairman, and he turns and sort of looks, and Hamilton whispered in his ear something, and those big bushy eyebrows of his, I saw him go, like in disbelief at what he's hearing from Hamilton. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
And he said, you tell Mr. Butterfield that if he is not here early this afternoon, that I'm going to send the Senate Sergeant-at-Arms to arrest him.
I knew he wasn't really going to have federal marshal pick me up on the street, but that was his way of saying, be here.
At shortly after 1, he arrived at the Senate somewhat contrite, more compliant, and nicely coiffed.
Butterfield, are you aware of the installation of any listening devices in the Oval Office of the President?
I was aware of listening devices. Yes, sir.
Butterfield's revelations came while Nixon was in Bethesda Naval Hospital with pneumonia. His tapes, the evidence that proved his involvement in Watergate, were certain to be subpoenaed. Now he was faced with a crucial decision. Should he destroy them